Hey everyone, welcome to Beyond the Quo, where we challenge the status quo and empower entrepreneurs, leaders, and change makers to redefine success on their own terms. I'm your host, Stacey Luces, and today we've got an extraordinary guest. I'm so excited to share her with you, whose story is a testament to resilience, reinvention, and the power of purpose-driven leadership. Joining us today is Janet Orozco Feller. Welcome, Janet.
Thank you so much, Stacey.
Oh,
I'm
welcome.
so happy to be here.
Yay. She is a seasoned entrepreneur. We will share how we met because it's a cool story. Business consultant and a marketing strategist with over 2 decades of experience. She has successfully founded, scaled, and sold multiple businesses across industries, including finance, real estate, and construction. Today, she works as a business consultant at Assurance Business Concepts, specializing in helping entrepreneurs build strong financial foundations. We all need that. Secure funding and scale sustainably. Beyond her consulting work, Janet is also the host of Impulse Latino, which is a Spanish language podcast dedicated to spotlighting Hispanic entrepreneurs and celebrating their journeys towards success. Her mission? To empower, educate, and uplift the business community by sharing stories that inspire others to pursue their dream. But your journey has been far from linear.
For sure.
You've had to reinvent yourself, right? And navigate a lot of challenges. But the one I want to talk to you most about. So I was on your podcast.
You were.
Last week.
Yeah,
Was it
that was so
only
much
last
fun.
week? Last week, Friday. I feel so honored. I was the first English-speaking guest.
You were.
Yeah.
You
So
were.
hopefully that resonated well. And Janet and I met a couple weeks ago. It seems like longer
It
than
seems
that.
like forever, right?
Yes. We met a couple weeks ago at the HEI, Hispanic Entrepreneur Initiative Symposium, which was up at FAU, which is Florida Atlantic University for those of you in Florida. And, I gave a keynote, a CEO masterclass, and Janet came up, and we have stayed in touch and had multiple coffees and teas since then.
Yeah.
But tell me, the one story that struck me the most, and, in networking, you never know, and meeting for coffee, you never know, like, what connections you're going to have.
Yeah. for
And
sure.
certainly we ended up chatting for almost 2 hours.
It was crazy.
Yes.
It was a coffee meeting. I expected a
Yes.
half hour.
But I loved, one, getting to know you and sort of your background, but also you've had to navigate like deep personal significant loss. And I still think about that and talk about that story, but I want you to share kind of like what happened and how that influenced and impacted you, not only as a professional, but certainly as a mom when that happened.
Yeah. So there have actually been two losses in my life that were tremendously significant for me and for my family. The first was I was married to my son's father,
Yeah.
and that was not a great relationship. That was an abusive relationship. And so I chose to end it when my son was 3 years old. Very difficult choice to make because I was raised, Cuban, Colombian, very traditional. We get married and we stay married, right? And
Even if it's roommate status.
yes, and that is forever.
Yeah.
And I had a child, and my intention was never to leave, but it was not. I decided to leave when I realized that it was damaging my son. When one day my son looked up at my ex-husband, his father, who was 6'3", and he was only 2.5 years old, and
Yeah.
my son put up his fist and said, "Don't you dare hurt my mama."
No.
And it was that moment. That was a turning point when I said, "I'm hurting him. This is not how this child is going to grow up."
Yeah.
So I had to. I owned an electrical contracting company back then with my ex-husband in New York City, and it was my company. I had founded it. I had put in the money to start it. He was the vice president, but I owned all the shares. So I fired him.
Yeah. That is so badass.
I did. It sounds badass, but it was very
Scary, I'm
frightening
sure.
because
And
he was the
how
license
the
holder.
family kind of, because I feel like, you're right?
It was
Talking about
rough.
that traditional upbringing and all of the expectations on us to just put up and shut up.
Yeah.
Like, what was that? What kind of courage
It took a lot of courage. I have to say I had a lot of support from my parents.
Yeah.
But I was close to his family as well, and that was rough.
Yeah.
That was really rough, and it was a whirlwind period. My divorce took 3 years in the criminal courts of Queens County, which was super fun. But I learned a lot about myself during those 3 years. They say that a woman is like a tea bag. You put her in hot water to test her strength, and I learned that, man, am I a tough tea. I'm a dark tea.
With caffeine.
With lots of caffeine. But, you learn about yourself, you grow. I took on a partner in the electrical contracting company and grew that for a while. That didn't work out because that partner started stealing money from me, which was fun. So I disbanded that and started doing consulting work. And then I was doing consulting work for construction, and I was also a real estate broker. I was using the skills that I had from construction to really reinvent myself. And during that time, I met the love of my life, and we had a wonderful relationship. And I thought, wow, I get a second chance.
Yeah.
And it was tremendous. We opened up businesses in Montreal. He was a contractor as well. So we had a lot going on. And unfortunately, in 2011, he passed away.
That's crazy.
Yeah. So that was another huge blow that required me to reinvent myself, which we all have to at some point reinvent ourselves. Life is not linear. The best laid plans.
You said something so profound when we first talked about this a couple of weeks ago, because I feel the same way after my near-death experience, which was who you are before and who you are after have to be astronomically different.
Yeah.
To survive.
So that was a huge blow. I was so in love with him. And he was my best friend. He was my business partner.
Yeah.
He was my lover. He was like,
what was
he was
his
everything.
name?
Sal. His name was Sal. He was my everything. And so I lost a gazillion people in one.
Yeah.
And I found myself very alone. And in order to reinvent myself, I really had to become a different person. I think I even look differently. Like I look at pictures of myself from back then, and I kind of miss her too, because she was pretty cool.
Yeah.
But
That's so important, right? I think if I had to equate that to something else, minus the absolute tragic part of it, when we become moms, I feel like there's a before and after.
Oh, yeah.
Even during pregnancy, yes, right? There's
totally
another
changed.
human
There's
inside of you,
right.
taking up space, rearranging your guts, right? All of the things, right? Really dominating what you can and can't eat to some extent.
And really changing your body. Your body changes from before and after.
And then you birth a whole soul,
yeah,
a whole human, and it is a distinct before and after.
100%.
And who you are before and who you are forevermore after.
100%. Yeah.
Right? And even looking at pictures or what's important to you, it's like the matrix resettles.
Right. Well, your perspective completely changes.
And I think loss and pain also, because that's transcendent joy, but loss and pain can also have that impact on us, where we have to become something different to thrive.
Yeah. Because
the alternative is, not acceptable to some extent, right?
Right.
So talk to me about the move here, kind of to Florida.
Well, that's fast forwarding quite a bit.
So after that happened, you stayed, you were still in New York?
Yeah, I was still in. So this happened in 2011.
Got it.
So I basically divested myself of everything I had because I really had to change everything. So I sold the businesses. I went to work for a company for the first time in a long time.
Yeah.
I went and became the director of marketing at a mortgage bank. And the reason I did that is because I needed something where I could just drop it at the end of the day. And as a
I was
business
just
owner,
going to say, because during healing, like you have to almost conserve, and people underestimate. I shouldn't say underestimate, but significantly, they don't know how hard being an entrepreneur and a business owner is. It's 24/7.
it really is.
It's actually 38.
Yeah. No, it truly is.
It truly
because
is.
You never
turned
put
off.
it down.
Yeah.
You never put it down.
Yeah.
It always occupies your thoughts.
Yeah.
And I love that life. I love the entrepreneur life, but it was too much for me to handle. And I certainly couldn't do anything the same anymore.
Tell me what balance looked
survive.
like during that time, if there was any.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah.
Balance?
Yeah. Yeah.
There was none.
Yeah.
No, there was no balance. There were
Paddling the boat.
Yeah, it was just survival.
Yeah.
At that point.
Yeah.
And my son was 13, and it changed him a lot too. He felt like he had to grow up and, become, and he started to worry about me, which I hated. But he was 13, so he was coming into his manhood too,
Yeah.
right?
And
So
I think that's a masculine trait, is to want to protect and,
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Like I remember him doing things that he had never done before, like bringing me tea and going, "Mama, are you okay?"
Yeah.
And bringing me tea. Like this is not something this child had ever done before, or just asking me check-in questions, right? Like I need to know that you're okay. So it was me and him against the world again, and we figured it out. I mean,
Talk to me about how community looks like during those times. Not just community, the big community, but the small community, the people that help you kind of not only pick up the pieces, but tell you when it's time to button it up.
Yeah. So I owe quite a debt of gratitude to my parents, who were so supportive during this time.
Yeah.
In fact, my parents live in Boynton Beach, and they did then also. But my mom moved in with me. So
Wow.
I joke with my dad that we share a wife, because she became my wife.
Sure. Yeah.
During that time. And she was
Yeah.
she was taking care of me. And, really making it so I could move forward. So they were so instrumental. But my friends, I wore black for a year. Like I was devastated. And my friends were very patient with me. But obviously they didn't want to see me wallow in misery. So they really tried very hard
Yeah.
to get me to move
Yeah.
beyond
Forward.
that point.
Sure.
And, pushing me to do things that I wasn't necessarily dying to do.
And I mean, the only way I can equate that, so I had a second term miscarriage. And I feel like my grief process was super long. And also, if I laughed out loud, I just had a moment of guilt where I felt like I was not honoring
I
what
understand
had
that.
happened.
Yeah.
And if somebody said, let's go do something super fun or take a vacation, I felt like I hadn't yet earned the right to be happy or to have me back, because I was still supposed to honor this devastating loss. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so we do need those people to seek us out and
Yeah.
shine a little
light.
right?
A little light, a
Yeah.
little laughter, because you're still alive, right?
Sure,
And
sure.
you're here for a purpose. That's what I had to learn again.
Yeah.
I had to learn that the best way to honor my relationship with him and to honor him would be to live a good life, because
Yeah.
that's what he wanted for me.
Yeah. Talk to me about like business Janet at this point in time, right? Because business owner, right, leaving an abusive relationship, having this devastating loss happen, having to reinvent and recreate what success meant to you, but also who did you want to be in this moment, right?
Yeah.
For your son again,
Right.
right?
So one of the main reasons that I wanted to be an entrepreneur was the flexibility that it allowed me to be a mother to my son.
In between the 30 hours a day.
Correct. But I could go schedule my life to be the class mom at the
love it.
school trip. And while
It's the best part of this
yeah.
gig for me now.
while I couldn't, pick him up at school,
Yeah.
I could do things with him that other moms weren't able to do because they had a 9 to 5. I had a 9 a.m. to 9 a.m. the next day. So I had 24 hours to schedule everything in. And often what suffered was my sleep, basically. But but that, that's how I structured my life. And so I found that I had to reinvent myself after both things.
Sure.
So, I mean, there were multiple businesses that I started. The electrical contracting, I sold to my partner.
And real estate a little bit.
And
right?
yeah, real estate I was doing, but I didn't enjoy it. I hated residential real estate.
Yeah.
Didn't love it. Yeah. Commercial, the deals fall apart really quickly.
Sure.
So I wasn't loving that. It wasn't my jam. I opened up a merchant services company because, funny enough, what attracted me was that as a contractor, you wait forever to get paid. When you're doing merchant services, you get paid before your clients do.
Wow.
So I was like, wow.
Sign me up for that.
I don't have to chase money ever again.
If I had to distill, so what I like to do is like provide a little bit of a roadmap for others, right? And so if I had to distill what we just talked about, a couple of things. Life is going to life no matter what.
For sure.
And some lessons are devastating and designed to strip you to the bone, I feel. And some are just taps on the shoulder, right? Like tripping on a step, right? I mean, whatever. And I think that there's a potential in all of us to be and do things differently quickly. Sometimes it takes a thought, a conversation, a podcast, a movie, a quote, to just a song. For me, music is my jam, right? Like music has always, and I think for millions and millions of us, inspires us and sits with us and grieves with us and is joyous with us, right? And I think that in these moments where we're having these big life things happen, having the wherewithal to say, I'm going to try different things in spite of the fact that I may not be an expert at it. I'm going to put the thing down if it doesn't fit me instead of forcing it to fit. Because I think we do that also. And that's part of staying in the status quo, right?
Sure.
Is being, I don't want to say unwilling, but being uncomfortable with the discomfort of a bad fit. You're like, well, it still kind of fits.
We can become very comfortable with discomfort.
Simple thing. A lot of us in middle age have a backache or a specific part of our body that hurts. And at first it was bad. And then a couple months later it was tolerable because we've kind of ignored. It's like being in a noisy apartment. Outside is noisy. After a while you don't hear it. And then you have guests over and they're like, oh my God, it's so noisy.
Right.
And
how
then
do you live here?
Yes. And so I feel like that physical pain, we learn to live with it. And many times we have an emotional pain or I like to call it like a purpose pain, where you're not living your true purpose. And the vibration gets louder and louder and louder as we get older until you're forced to stop.
Sure.
I feel for some of us, because our purpose maybe is a little bit more compelling to the universe, not to other people, but for whatever we're designed to do, the wake-up call is like swift and sharp and like there's no coming back. It's either you do it or you get off you're right.
Right.
And so I tend to gravitate energetically, I think, to people that have had like massive things happen to them and then recreated. Right. So I love that you were able to be courageous in these moments, big and small, but also try different things, but also play it smart and safe while you healed, such as not trying to do it yourself and having mom move in, such as taking, a 9-to-5 gig because we know the pace that entrepreneurship and business ownership demands of us and our customers. And just saying, when I sign off, I just want to sign off.
Yeah.
I think that is totally outside the status quo. And it's a good playbook, if you will, some of it, for people that are in situations where the alternative, which is better, but getting there is maybe murky.
Mm-hmm.
So you tend to just stay.
Right.
Yeah.
And you can be paralyzed by fear also
Sure.
of making a change, especially when you're going through a lot. So it's scary to make a change any time of your life. But when you're really going through grief or going through something emotional in your life, it's even harder to make a change. So yeah, that's why I said I'm a tough T.
I love it.
I'm a tough T.
Let's talk about your podcast. Tell me about kind of the people that like in your community that listen to this. Tell me about kind of like why it's a passion, because podcasting is not for like the soft-hearted.
Yeah, so
it's hard work.
So funny enough, this is one of the ways that I go beyond the quo.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
I never thought of doing anything like this before.
Yeah.
Never, ever, ever.
Yeah.
I've never been on camera. It's not
Yeah.
it's not a thing that I've done. I moved here to Florida just a year ago. And had to reinvent myself again. I moved here with my fiance. So, I do have a wonderful life now. It all hasn't been doom and gloom. I met a great guy after many years of being single. And
There's
bought
hope
a
out
house.
there. There's hope
There's
out there,
hope.
people.
There's hope. Don't lose hope. So I met a great guy and we got engaged. We bought a house in Lake Worth here in Florida. And I met the owners of the studio where I do my podcast, and they invited me onto their show. And all of a sudden, things just started snowballing because they were like, wow, you're a natural. You need to be doing this for yourself. What interests you? And having moved here to Florida, I've connected more to my Hispanic side.
Sure.
And
absolutely.
I was meeting a lot more Hispanic entrepreneurs. And I said, I would like, at first they had to convince me to do the podcast, but they had wanted to really revamp their they had tried before to have a Spanish presence.
Yes.
And they found out that I speak Spanish, and they just kind of like led me along. And now I ended up, I started out with two other women hosting a show called Impulse Latino. And one dropped out, so then it was just me and the other woman. And then we split our podcasts recently, just about 4 shows ago. So the podcast you were on was actually Impulso con Janet, and she has another podcast called La Vida Lucky.
Okay.
And so now I'm on my own and creatively taking it where I want to take it. But the point of the podcast is to highlight Hispanic business owners, help them to, talk about their businesses, their journeys, their struggles, give advice to other aspiring business owners. And that's the kind of thing that I've always been passionate about, because I've worked with small businesses and small business owners pretty much my entire career. Whether it's in financing, marketing, it's always been a passion of mine. And as a small business owner myself, I can totally relate to the struggles that they go through.
And I think it doesn't matter our background, because when I was invited by Mary Saul, who is one of the co-founders for Hispanic Entrepreneurs Initiative, to be a panelist at the Hispanic Entrepreneurs Initiative, I was like, I felt maybe it wasn't my place to talk to them because I didn't speak Spanish, all of those things. And all of those little fears and insecurities came rushing up for no reason. And she was like, no, absolutely, you're coming. And this is my point, even for what you're saying and those that are listening to this podcast. The human experience transcends all of these things that try to keep us separate.
100%.
Whether it's language or how we look or where we were born or like how many, do we have kids or not, like the shared human experience of even what we've talked about here, grief, happiness, falling in love again, our children assuming a leadership role and a caretaker role in our family, in our lives, when it was the reverse, like him bringing you tea, pivoting, like all of it is rather a shared human experience. And I think the more that we lower some of these barriers and talk honestly about struggles that we're having, but more importantly, and I don't feel like immigrant communities do this enough, celebrating our wins.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
I think it's because it's a struggle to get started
Yeah.
when you come in as an immigrant. I did not. I was born in the country, but my parents both came in as immigrants. And so I was front row center watching their struggle.
Yes.
You know,
But it gave you such a deep perspective to help because you understood some of the pitfalls quicker.
Exactly.
Than others. Now mine is
now you're banging your watch. It's contagious.
What do you say to women that are, and men, but I would like to think mostly women our age between, I guess, 35 and early 60s watch this, that are kind of in midlife, that are navigating their own personal journeys of reinvention. And it doesn't have to be dramatic, right? It doesn't have to be moving across country and like changing your whole identity, but there has to be an inner conviction that you want something different and that you deserve something different and that you're worthy of something different.
Yeah.
What do you say to those women that are on the fence about whether they're in a marriage that feels cringy after or not right, or they have a business that's not going well and struggling and they're still trying to wrap Band-Aids around it, or worrying about, hey, I live in this community and I don't feel supported. I don't know the next step to move, or I want to do a podcast, or I want to have my voice out there, but who's going to listen to me? Like, what do you think are maybe 2 or 3 things that you would say to that woman?
So I think it's very important, especially with women, because we tend to be caretakers, taking care of everyone else, nurturing all of our relationships, our families, our friendships. And oftentimes the last person we think about is ourselves. And what I've told friends of mine and, colleagues is start treating yourself more like you would treat your best friend. Because your best friend would not talk about you the way you talk about yourself.
Isn't it crazy?
In your own
Some
head.
of the stuff we say. It's so crazy.
And start listening to yourself and your needs, because if your best friend had needs that were unmet, you would be trying to say, hey, let's work on this because I see that you're struggling with this or that. So that I think that's important for women to remember, because like I said, we tend to take care of everyone before
and that
ourselves.
Is a conditioning.
It is a conditioning.
That is a complete conditioning, because that is not truth and fact.
And you know what? If you don't take care of yourself, then you kind of start dropping the ball everywhere else. Things start to unravel, and well, you end up in a health crisis, or you end up, something happens, because if you're not taking care of yourself, something's going to unravel, right? So
those are great. I'm just processing. So, I was telling you over coffee before we met, the 3 things that I talk about are redefining success in our own terms, which we've touched on, living authentically, sort of that redefinition of yourself and your goals and what you want to do in your life. And the other big one is leading courageously. I think people oftentimes underestimate the word leader and leading and leadership to mean something maybe outside of themselves that they do, in the sense of, I run a company, I have employees, or whatever. It takes leading ourselves to do all of the things you just talked about.
Right.
And understanding what's important to us.
Sure.
And that changes depending on the season of life that we're in, whether we're now having kids or not wanting to have kids, or right? All of those things happen.
Right.
But when you think about leading courageously from within, and now that you have a voice with the podcast, I'm always cognizant that, this is now in the open, right? It's out there. And even when I'm long gone, my kids can come back to this, or my grandkids, and be like, oh, grandma said this, or do you know what I mean?
Right.
When you think about like the leadership role that you've assumed in a different way now, with the mic, the power of the mic, and the voices that you're going to bring on and share their stories, and that amplifies all of us, right?
Sure.
What comes to mind for you in terms of an uncertainty that you're still working through, and a giddiness that's like, oh, this is great.
So I have to tell you that the podcast has become my favorite thing that I do.
Me too.
It's what makes me excited.
Yeah.
It really is.
Yeah.
And I was nervous about doing it, and I jumped in anyway because I don't know.
What's the worst that can happen? Two people listen, your mom and your dad.
Right,
Like,
exactly.
That's what I think. I was like, my dad
really
is still gonna love my post.
Yeah, really.
Right? That's
Right.
the worst that can happen.
But I've always been a very private person. And so, speaking about my
But
story.
we're conditioned to be that way too.
Yes.
Now I talk about hysterectomies and menopause, and I'm sure my father is like, what in the actual? But it is what it is.
But look, I just talked about the two most painful experiences of my life.
I
right
talked about talking to my teens about sex the other day, and even saying the word, I'm like, I am sure my aunties
is
across
fainting
the
somewhere.
globe are like, she said sex. Yes, we did, because we have to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So really embracing or coming into my authentic self
Yes.
is what I've noticed is happening.
Yeah. And I want to put a pin in that to say none of us are a fully baked product human as we do the work.
Right.
Every year, in fact, who we were when we started this conversation is probably different than who we are now, because we've learned something from each other.
Right.
And so if we go by that sort of thought, we're ever changing.
Yeah.
And
We're
so
always growing.
Yeah. Either get with the program, or, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I just said we're always growing. I don't think everyone always is.
No.
But if you're not growing, you're not really living.
You're dying.
Right.
Yeah. I like this quote, and I will mess this quote up, but my dad loved Bruce Lee. I mean, who didn't, right?
Yeah.
And Bruce Lee had this quote about water, like being like water. And I used to say it in my team meetings all the time when I worked in federal government, and I'm sure they were like, what is she talking about? But when you're like water, there are times when you have to be fluid and move around objects. There are times when you have to be solid and impenetrable and stand your ground and kind of have core values and understand what your convictions are and push back, right?
Right.
And then there's times when you just, water evaporates. You just leave. Like,
Wow,
have
I love
boundaries,
that.
right? Have boundaries and just bye. Have
oh
a
my
good
God,
life.
I love this.
And in my mind, I always think, just be like water. If it's something that I'm buffing up against and I'm feeling like I feel it in my chest, or learn to read your body cues. Like, I feel my face getting a little bit warmer because maybe I'm not sure and I'm questioning whatever. I'm just like, well, what has to happen right now? Do I stand my ground? Is this something I want to like die on the hill for?
Right.
Do I just become fluid and let it drift by because it's not worth my time or my energy? Let that person have that opinion or that whatever the thing is, right? Or do I just leave the situation?
I love that. I really do. I had never heard that quote.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go look it up
I'm
now.
sure I botched
So I
it.
get it word for word.
But yeah, but I always say, I actually think I'm, and again, my aunties, but I want another tattoo. I think I'm going to just say, be like water.
I like it.
Yeah. That's for my
really do.
50th in a few years, though. So we have some time. Where can people find you if they want to learn more about you and what you do in the world? I guess, wait, before we do that, do you want to share anything about what you do currently and kind of, let's do that.
Sure. So these days I am helping business owners to establish true corporate credit under their EIN number.
Yeah.
So that they can separate out their personal credit as much as possible from their business and always qualify for the working capital that they need to scale. So I'm helping them to operate from a much more financially sound perspective. And I also have the loan products every step of the way. So whether you're just using personal credit right now and you don't qualify for anything else, but you have a burning need for capital, or you're all the way at the other end of the spectrum where you have true corporate credit and it's good credit and you qualify for the best loan terms.
So I understood that. Talk to me like I'm Adam, who's 14, my son, and he wants to start a little business. Talk to me like you would talk to him in the sense of the importance of what you just said. Because I think a lot of immigrant entrepreneurs, we put our own money into ventures that we don't necessarily have to because we think that's what we have to do.
So usually in a venture, you do have to invest
Sure.
some of your own personal money. But as your venture grows, you really should be looking at that venture as a separate entity from yourself. And legally, that's even something you should do to protect yourself, your person, from the business. God forbid
any liability or
someone
anything
sues
like
you.
Yeah.
So you really should think of that business as a separate entity, operating separately from you. When you're merging funds, you're actually telling the world that you and your business are one and the same. So if someone were to sue you, they can actually attach your house and any property that you have if you're using personal funds to run your business and personal credit to run your business.
That's scary.
It is scary. The thing is, it is not intuitive on how to build business credit. Personal credit is pretty intuitive. Because it's very
They start
regulated.
us in college.
They start us, and the minute we get out of college and we want to buy a car, or we need a credit card, or we want to buy a house, or any of those things, those transactions get reported on.
Yeah.
So you build a credit score for better or for worse. You know, some people do better with it, some people do worse, but it's not a mystery on how to build a credit score. It is on the business side because the banks like to keep it a secret.
What advice would you give to, and I guess let me back up a little bit. I will preface that by saying I have an 18-year-old and a soon-to-be 15-year-old, and they are very different. One is going to go to college and kind of maybe do the traditional route, even though she's an artist and stuff. Adam, my son, I think he's going to want to do different things and challenge me on college, and I'm okay with that. What do you say to the generation coming up that is probably feeling some degree of this right now in terms of entrepreneurship and wanting to do something different and having courage to do that, given your background? And then on the other end of the spectrum, maybe folks that were laid off or very despondent in the roles that they have, and they've got 10, 15 years left where they want a runway to do something different, whether it's a side business or just something different. Like, I know it's two very different audiences, but what would you say to both of them at these very pivotal points in life where one's at the beginning of the runway and the other one is like the runway in front of me is shorter, but I still have time?
Yeah. So to both sets of groups, I would say that we live in an age where information is so easily accessible.
Sure.
And it's so easy to learn something new. And if you find something you're passionate about it, it's so easy
that is the key
to delve into it and learn, even for free. I mean, the internet has changed all of our lives.
Sure.
And now with AI in the mix, I mean, it's
oh my God, things that used to take me like 2 hours is now like 30 minutes or less.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So it's incredible the things that we can learn and do. I personally don't think college is the be all and end all.
Me too.
I think that a lot of people have gone to college because it is the thing to do. You have to go to college because otherwise you're not, acceptable.
And yet we know so many people.
And yet we know so many people that
outside
go to college.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And a lot of people end up saddled with debt, having studied something.
We only paid out our debt because we both have masters. We only paid out our debt in our 30s,
but
early 30s.
It's incredible how many
cuts into your wealth.
It does. But having studied something that doesn't even help them in life,
which is happening more and more frequently.
So I would say, I'm certainly not saying that college is bad.
Yeah.
But I would say
explore the options.
Really explore what your passion is and what you want to be doing, and that can change as your life changes. As
you've shown, and as I've shown, we can reinvent and recreate and do something completely outside of what we thought we were going to do.
Yeah.
Using, this is the key thing, because I hear so many people saying, "Well, I have to start from scratch." No, you don't.
No, because you already have life experience, you have skills, and all of those can translate into something new.
Something came to mind just now. When people are writing a book, if you go to the footnotes or the acknowledgments or the citation section, it's Massive.
Yes.
If you were to think of your life like I'm writing a new story, take an example of when people write books. You are pulling and referencing and learning and using what the experts have already done to inform and sort of accelerate what it is you're trying to do. Like if anybody says to me, I'm starting from scratch, unless you really are, and like you're inventing something that has never, ever, you're still not starting from scratch. You're probably using math and engineering and right? So let's stop saying that.
Right.
Yeah. I don't want to use the word pivot. I'm a Friends fanatic. So I was laughing. The show Friends, they would always say pivot.
Yes.
I think it's just creation. We're creating.
Yes.
And I think that's so much more powerful than starting from scratch.
And even if we're young, we're born with certain skills and we're born with our gifts that are given to us. And so you're still not starting from scratch.
No. I love that too.
You're unique and you have things within you that no one else has.
Yeah. Do you think fish swim around thinking I'm starting from scratch? I can't go into
I doubt they do.
Janet, where can people find you, both on social media and sort of your podcast and stuff, if they want to stay in touch?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn as Janet Orozco Feller. My email address is Janet, Janet, at assurancebusinessconcepts, with an S at the end, .com.
Janet, I want to thank you so much for coming on. This has been a masterclass in resiliency and perseverance and just my favorite word, reinvention. And I, having only known you a couple weeks, there's a grace about you that is amazing. But I think also the people that are the most graceful and the most grateful have gone through, the fire.
Yeah.
And so I love that. You really are a good tea bag.
Well,
good cup of tea.
Well, thank you so much for having
You're
me.
welcome.
I've truly enjoyed the experience.
Yeah.
And I am so grateful that I met you because I do feel that we are kindred spirits. Yeah.
I love that.
And
All
I'm,
right.
I'm glad for the friendship we
Me
started.
too. It's so good. All right. If you've loved this episode, drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. Share, like, and subscribe. Follow me on Instagram at Stacey.Luces, Luces, and it's Stacey with an E, Stacey, because that's the only way to spell it.
I love it.
And my website is, of course, staceyluces.com. And I will talk to you next week. Thank you. Thanks, Janet.
Thank you.
You're welcome.